Hey there, James here from shouldhappen.com. Hope you guys are all good. Just wanted to quickly talk about an article we published last week called APT, the tax to end all taxes. And I swear that wasn't a clickbait title. The APT really is something that could replace all existing forms of taxation. So I just wanted to quickly talk about what the APT is, how it's going to work, and whether it has any chance at all of happening, because it's a very radical concept. So really, fundamentally, the APT is about using technology. So the basic idea is that every single transaction that takes place in the economy, whether that's buying a glass of wine, buying a house, buying a car, or trading foreign currencies or securities, every single transaction that takes place will be taxed at 0.35% on each side of the transaction, so 0.7% in total. So the idea is that once you start taxing every single transaction that takes place in the economy, you're broadening the tax base considerably. So really, if we do start taxing each transaction at 0.35% on each side, the idea is that we can eliminate every existing form of taxation that we have now, whether that's income tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, sales tax, excise duty, these sorts of taxes that we're currently subject to. So if we implement the APT, really the way it would work is you mandate that the banks automatically take 0.35% from each side of the transaction, give that straight to the government, it's all anonymous, so you'd never have to fill out a tax return ever again, it's automatic and anonymous. So they're two really significant advantages. A further advantage is that the entire tax system would be open, transparent and predictable. Currently, there are so many tax loopholes, whether you're in the US or in Europe, and I'm sure it's the case pretty much everywhere in the world. If you have a smart tax lawyer, you can pretty much get out of a number of different taxes, or at least reduce your rate. Under the APT, there's really no escape. Everyone is subject to the same tax. So if the government wants to adjust the tax, we're all subject to that change. It's open and transparent, and it doesn't matter what kind of tax lawyer you've got, you can't get out of it. So even though the APT has advantages in terms of simplicity, transparency and predictability, one of the major advantages of it is the way it can be justified. So really with the APT, all the government is saying is that we're going to charge a fee for the institutions that make commerce possible. It's just a very straightforward justification, unlike other forms of taxation. I personally can't think of why we have an income tax. I mean, it makes sense because the government generates revenue from it, but it's difficult to actually justify an income tax. Whereas with the APT, all the government is saying is we're providing the infrastructure that allows you to engage in commerce, and we're going to charge a small fee for your ability to use that infrastructure. So the philosophical justification for the ATP is straightforward, and I think everyone would be able to accept that. Now the question remains whether the APT has any significant drawbacks, and of course it does, nothing is perfect. The vast majority of revenue generated under the APT would come from trading in stocks, bonds, currencies and securities. So for short-term traders, this would be a disaster. It would actually suppress liquidity in the markets and would reduce the profitability of short-term, high-risk trading. But at the same time, if you're implementing the APT, you would also be eliminating capital gains tax, corporation tax and income tax. So the trade-off could actually be to the advantage of long-term, low-risk investors. So although there would be an initial shock in the market, over the long term it could encourage healthier forms of investment and trading. So although you have this drawback, there are also advantages that come with it once you consider that you're eliminating all these other forms of taxation. Over the longer term, an economy that implemented the APT could end up being more attractive for certain types of investors. Now, as was mentioned a little bit in the article, there's an objection from some left-leaning critics that the tax isn't progressive. Now, strictly speaking, that's true, the tax isn't progressive. Every single transaction is taxed at the same rate. But it strikes me that this is a slightly strange argument, because if you consider the tax contribution of low earners, it's barely negligible. For example, if you earn £14,000 a year, you're only being taxed 0.35%. Now your employer's being taxed another 0.35%, but as far as you're concerned, you're only paying £50 a year in income tax. Similarly, when you go out to buy a product, you're not paying the VAT here in the UK of 20%, you're paying 0.35% on each transaction. So for lower earners, the tax contribution is barely negligible. And even though it's not progressive, this would be to the advantage of most in society, even though higher earners are also paying a lower level of income tax. So the big question obviously is, could this happen? And I'm sorry, the short answer is no. The APT has almost no chance of happening unless it happens globally. No single economy is going to be the first to trial this out because of the shock I talked about earlier when it comes to short-term trading, particularly countries like the UK and the US and places like Singapore and Switzerland that really rely on financial services. There's no chance that these countries would implement this unilaterally. But if the people of countries in Europe and in North America could really get behind this idea, it's certainly possible that in the long run we could get the APT implemented globally. The advantages are obvious for everyone in society, provided you're not a short-term trader. So really, it's in the interest of the people to really start pushing this idea. And if we do it globally, it's possible that we could eventually get some traction. So I would say right now, there's no chance that the APT is going to be implemented anytime soon, but eventually we might get somewhere if enough people get behind it. So just quickly before I sign off, as some of you may have noticed, the new website is finally live. I think it looks great. We've had some good feedback so far. There's a few new articles on there. Obviously the APT article that I've just talked about. We've got one on the Atlantic Football League, which is a very intriguing prospect. I think that actually could happen. I'm going to do another video on that later this week. And we also got a new article that we published this morning, which is about ending the 3 PM blackout rule in the Premier League. Sounds like an obscure subject, actually affects football fans across the UK, so that one's worth checking out. I'll probably do another video on that, maybe later today actually. So you can obviously follow us here on the YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Twitter at should_happen, where we'll be posting about all the new articles and about other subjects. So thanks for checking out the video, thanks for checking out the site, and please subscribe and share. See you soon.